Hello and welcome to another episode of Path of Exile University. Today we are doing layered defenses with Nugiyen. And for this episode, so we're going to be talking about how to make your character more tanky. And I have a couple of video clips I want to show here from Nugiyen. These are some famous clips, and I figured it would be a crime not to show them at the start of this.
To straight up one-shot you, you gotta build some defense.
True.
You gotta build some defense. It's one of the reasons why I went Scion.
Others say you've long helped this land, holy man.
I love this video clip.
If you're back on it now.
When you see him.
Well,
It's one of my favorite clips, and we do actually have another one too. I'm might as well because they're both so good, and I don't think any other streamer manages to get all these timings right. They're so perfect.
4 of these hit me, I could die. But I know how to dodge, so I don't die.
Sorry, Nugi.
Oh!
With that being said, I love these clips. They're like so fucking good, and I figured we would show them at the start. And it does emphasize the importance of building defense. And there are some things in Path of Exile that will just kill you. And a lot of the things you died to, you can't die to anymore because they've been nerfed. But they're beautiful clips. How are you doing, Nugi?
I'm doing good. Always enjoy myself.
That's good.
Seeing myself dying
That's
repeatedly.
Good. It's
right.
And that is one of the important things about playing Path of Exile on hardcore is you have to be okay with dying, because even if you do build defense properly, you can just get one shot.
Oh, then you didn't build it properly.
Nah, there's things that can kill you.
Depends on what situation, but
Especially
sure.
in the first 2 weeks
sure.
of a league where you're beta testing.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I would agree. If we apply it to everything.
Yeah. So we have a lovely presentation here by Nugiyen.
Yes.
I love how you actually put that as well. If you know how to dodge, you won't die.
Exactly.
Awesome.
I had to.
No, that's beautiful. I love it.
Right. So I thought we would just kind of go through the mechanics as you would normally start picking them up and start using them. So first, we have the first slide. Early defenses, life, rest, movement. So when you talk about layered defense, there is one thing that is the most important, and it's that your health bar stays above 0. So life is important. So having enough life will mean that you don't die. I put a few numbers here. These are like my kind of go-to, just as my earliest breakpoints of where I should be, like how prepared I should be, which would be 1200 life by Act 5 Kitava. It generally prevents you from being one-shot. It's right on that area of getting slammed.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that's really gonna kind of set your time apart from when you feel like you're dying all the time to when you're not dying is when you can barely creep out of the range where things one-shot you. Because if you don't get one shot, well, then you can start recovering your life after you get hit by a big attack, and you can kind of make one big mistake at a time rather than never being able to make that. Because if you go into like a fight like Kitava and he slams you and you always die, well, that sucks. You have to start all over, especially on hardcore. But if you don't die to that one attack, well, it's basically a free life. So that's kind of that approach I go for early on.
Yeah, and these numbers matches up with what I do, which is around 300 life per act.
Yeah, that actually pretty much, yeah. I mean, if you have 1500 by Act 5 Kitava, fairly certain he can't one-shot you outside of a crit. Actually, totally forgot to add crit in here. But, I mean, it's just...
Boss crits are very, very punishing.
Yes. We'll talk about that in the end. We can just like briefly touch on that because that's kind of only like one way to deal with it. So let's kind of maybe make a couple, but it's not that important.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then resist, which is like I would say the second thing you should worry about, outside of just getting a reasonable life pool, which is so the game is balanced around you not having cap resist early on. So if you get cap resist early on, which is 75, which is the normal cap, should have written that. You basically feel immortal against everything up until when would you say we don't feel immortal anymore by having cap res and a reasonable life pool?
I mean, not against some of the bosses. Like even like innocence and stuff can like kill you pretty easily.
Yeah, I would say probably innocence is the first time.
Yeah.
Where you actually are required to have cap res, to feel like you don't get one shot by every ability he has.
Yeah.
Especially he has a beam as well that reduces your resist, so it feels even more punishing.
Same with the start of Act 5, even with the Flicker Strike monsters, they start dealing so much physical damage that it's not just about the resist anymore. I feel like there's a lot more elemental monsters early. So if you have Granite and resist capped, then you're kind of good to go through the entire story.
Or Evasion.
True.
But then that kind of requires you to have a higher life pool. We'll get to that. Yeah, so one thing to note about resist is that it gets, and this is like a running theme in PoE, is that defensive stats generally there's a few caveats, but a lot of them get a lot stronger the more we have of just that one specific thing. So with resist, going from, let's just start from the very basics, from 0 resist to 1 against any, like let's just say fire damage for the sake of argument here. If you go from 0 to 1%, you take 1% less damage. Okay? Then assume you could get it all the way up to 98%. And then you go to 99. Now you take half the damage that you would have taken at 98. So you take 2 damage, goes down to 1 damage. So as you can see, it gets the relative amount of damage reduction becomes higher and higher and higher the higher your resist becomes. So if you're feeling like the first 50% helped you quite a reasonable amount, and then you get another 25, and all of a sudden you feel like you can tank everything, it's because you're taking half the damage, and that's really 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 important. So that's why it's really good to cap your resist.
And the
Especially in
game is
PoE.
balanced around you having 75 elemental resist.
Yes, which is why it can feel so. You can feel so strong when you go above it, and you can feel so weak when you go below it.
Yeah.
For sure.
And just as a quick example, going from 75 to 76 L resist is 4% less damage taken.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so like at the 0 to 1, it's 1%, and at the 75 to 76 is 4%. That's quite significant. And this just keeps going up as you get more and more and more.
Yeah.
Which is why getting to 90, which is the current cap, is something a lot of people strive for at the end game.
Yeah.
And then I would say the last bit of defense early on, in the very early stages, would be movement. Because if you can move out the way of an attack, it doesn't hit you. Which was what I was trying to show in the first clip. If you don't get hit, if you know how to dodge, you don't die. And I'm not talking about PoE dodge, I'm talking about you actually just moving out of the way. So having a Quicksilver, having a Smoke Mine, having high amounts of, or a reasonable amount of movement speed to a certain point will get you out of a lot of situations. So having 0 is pretty bad. Having, I don't know, 100, it starts feeling like nice.
Yeah.
Say.
And that is actually like a thing to think about a lot when choosing your build, because
Yes.
if you have a build like, let's say Double Strike, where you literally have to stand next to the boss actively hitting to deal damage, then you have to build a completely different defense versus something like Essence Drain, where you can just chuck an Essence Drain on the boss, then focus on running around and dodging the mechanics. It's just a huge layer of defense that might not be something everyone thinks about.
Yeah, sure. No, moving in general is like, it's an over and underrated, depending on who you ask. It'll, you'll get different answers, but it's a very essential part of PoE, being able to move. And it's why it was considered so strong, and why they had to nerf certain like a certain chest. What was that called again? The one that gave you like such an insane amount of movement speed?
Queen of the Forest.
Yeah. Because it just gave you too much of that stat, which is, I mean, you can see it in lab when people just run through so fast that the traps don't even get to engage with you. I mean, that's a perfect example of movement speed just kind of like
Breaking the game.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I think that would be like just the first things to start considering. Make sure you have a reasonable life pool, cap your resist, and get some movement speed. And then you go on to like, well, what else? And I think we should go to the next.
Yep.
Now here, so there's going to be, the two next things are going to be evasion and then armor. These are the two next pieces of defense that you will have. So the first one we're going to look at here is evasion. So evasion, as a lot of people think, is actually not random. It is completely predictable if you know the accuracy of the enemy. So the way it works is that in PoE, whenever you encounter a monster, it will apply a number to you, which will then, I mean, I'm assuming that's how they've coded it, but for the sake of argument, this is how it works. Okay, so you get a number applied to you, and then depending on the monster's accuracy, it then keeps adding a number to you every time they attempt to hit you. So that means that if we just go from what I've written here, let's say you get a starting value of 23. The monster has enough accuracy versus your evasion to then add 20 entropy per hit. Let's assume then that there is a breaking point of 100 entropy where the game will then consider you in a position where you need to be hit, because it is now at that point. Let's say that's 100. So it'll go 23, monster tries to hit you. Oh, that is then 43, then 63, then 83, and now it breaks at 103. That means that you basically evade, and then you get hit. And then it goes back again to you evading, hit. And that's why evasion can be such a reliable tool. A lot of people think evasion is very unreliable, because what happens is that people will make a character generally on the right side of the tree, and they will pick evasion because it says evasion on the tree, and they have decks so they can use evasion gear. But then they forget to have enough life. Because what evasion doesn't do, it does not reduce the damage taken once you get hit. So the hit will be fairly large. So it's a very daunting thing to play an evasion build, especially if you're on a boss and you know that boss is going to hit you really hard on the 5th hit. And then you just have to be like, yeah, but it's not going to hit me again on the 6th hit. And that is basically how you can look at it. I think one of the best places that I've seen it work for me, well, there's multiple, but one that's very obvious is actually on Elder. So he does like tentacle things, and he has like some slaps and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of physical damage going on there. And you would think that that fight is very difficult on an evasion-based character. However, you take that one big hit, and then you don't get hit again until you recovered your life pool, because you have that evasion. So it's actually incredibly good, because it gives you that time in between. Then there's the problem of certain abilities that ignore evasion. And so those are the ones that you can only know about by actually playing the game and knowing that certain abilities have resolute technique, which is basically, I ignore your evasion completely and I just murder you. I think Sis can talk about this one with Vegan, I recall, a very long time ago.
Yeah, That was not in the game anymore, but there was a boss called Vagan.
Yes.
Who's now part of Betrayal. Well, actually, does he still have RT?
You see, that's a tough one. I actually don't know.
Well, Nam does from Beyond. And one of the
Yes.
exiles, the Cleave? Is it the Cleave exile?
I think so.
Yeah. So there's not that many things that has rest of the technique. The most shared one is Nam, for sure.
Yes. But you need to be very aware what these are. Otherwise, you might try and tank them, and you think, "Oh, I took a hit. I'll take the I'm dead." And that's not that we want to avoid that. Yeah. But yes, that's evasion. So basically, it is accuracy version versus evasion gives you a certain number, and depending on the discrepancy between those two, the larger the distance, the smaller the value of entropy that's added. So for most cases, you're on most bosses, especially at high level, you generally don't have enough evasion to do more than like evade the first, then get hit, evade the first, then get hit. If you stack a lot, you can get it higher. It's a fun little experience to actually try and going in and especially on the early bosses, stack like a couple thousand evasion and go in and go to like Brutus and just see him like repeatedly missing. But I guess Brutus is not that good anymore because he just puts the spikes on there. You're not. But just go and check it on his melee attack and you'll see it. It's actually fairly hilarious. You can get hit on the first hit. That's actually an important point here. You can get hit on the first hit because there's one random element to evasion, and that is the starting value. The starting value can actually be very high. And this is to prevent cheesing, to where people would figure out a way to get a low starting value evasion and then go in to then cheese a mechanic or cheese a boss by never actually being hit because you could force a low value. So that part is as random as anything else in PoE. So that's like the only part. But once the fight starts and you're actually fighting, it's really good. Also, evasion, I would say, is my preferred way of dealing with porcupines.
Yeah.
Because it's the most consistent. There's no like random, chance that it's not gonna work. Armor, as we'll talk about just in a second, is not as good because they can get additive elemental damage. So because they're always like porcupines are always hit based, and they protect against every assortment of damage type as long as it's a hit. It's against physical, elemental, chaos. That's it, right? We don't have anything else. I think that's it for PoE. I've played a lot of games these days. So yeah, that's how that works. Last thing to note about evasion is blind. Just as a side note, blind is very, very, very good. It basically cuts accuracy in half, meaning that I don't know if this ends up being half the entropy. I would assume so. It would make sense in my mind, but it basically just it's in the equation. It's just as you know, all multipliers can be added at any given time. It's just a 0.5 multiplier to the accuracy value at any point in time in that equation. There you go. That's evasion. I think that covers that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very strong, especially coupled with dodge.
Yes.
This one's actually something I'm not 100% sure on. If a monster has RT, does it also ignore dodge?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, now you, every time someone asks me that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I always say no. Because
that's the thing about Path of Exile. The devs don't really talk and tell us exactly, so a lot of it is just experimentation. But
your hits cannot be evaded. And evasion and dodging are two different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so you can still dodge. So they're not the same thing. And dodge is actually random. We'll get to that.
All right, next slide.
Be armor? Right. Armor is a bit of a tricky one as well. It is kind of it's a bit awkward coming into PoE because the first couple, like, so you'll have your resist, and then you'll have your life, and then you'll start adding these like weird things like armor and evasion, and you thought that you could just read the character sheet and they would tell you what they do, because the same thing, if you read the character sheet for evasion, it's a chance for you to get hit, and it's wait, is it without the U? People.
No, both are correct.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the character sheet will completely mess you up if you believe in it, because on evasion it'll assume an average monster, just a basic monster around your level, and it'll then assume how much accuracy that monster has. No strings attached. That's it. It just assumes that, and then it'll show you a number, which is your chance to hit, which can be completely wrong. Because they can have like accuracy auras, certain monsters have more accuracy, blues can have accuracy mods and all that kind of stuff. So you can't trust that at all. It's just an approximation. And the same thing goes for armor, which it'll assume some random amount of damage. Well, it's not random; it's preset, but it'll assume an amount of damage that you take, and it'll show your physical damage reduction in the character sheet, assuming that was the damage you took. However, as you can see here, I just copy pasted from the wiki, which is actually, I think, is a really good little copy paste, which is the rule of thumbs here. And this actually, the armor being quote unquote crushed, as we've always talked about, you can see it here how that works. Like how you have to have increasingly higher amounts of armor to mitigate that high value. Like there's a lot, you will very often see like 90% in the character tree, especially if you put on your granite on early. However, that assumes that you actually had 90 times the armor versus the damage. So let's say you get hit for 1,000. And that's very possible, like Kitava, for instance, right? If you put a granite, if you pop your granite and you have some other stuff at Kitava Act 5, there's a good chance that it's going to show like 90% physical damage reduction. But you go tank Kitava and he will chunk you. Because, let's say you have 3,000 armor, right? How much would that be against 1,000? Let's say 5,000 armor should then be against 1,000 damage to prevent 1/3.
Mm-hmm.
That's just 1/3, and it showed you 90%. So that's pretty silly. So you can't really trust that. However, armor is not a bad stat. It's really not a bad stat because you can stack it quite high, and it definitely helps you to mitigate the smaller hits quite efficiently. So there's a lot of times in PoE where you just get hit repeatedly by something, small creeps, whatever. They hit you a lot, and they can hurt a lot if you don't really have any like evasion or armor. But a reasonable amount of armor, and all of a sudden they do like half the damage per hit, and then they're manageable, and it feels a lot better.
Mm-hmm. And armor can also never mitigate more than 90%. Like you can't mitigate 100% of a hit.
Yeah, no. So you won't get life back with armor. That's not gonna work. No matter how much you have. Yeah. So that's armor, I guess. One thing about armor is that it's only against fizz, and it's only against hit. So there's a big distinction already. When you look at evasion and you look at armor, is that evasion covers all the bases, chaos and elemental. Armor is only against physical. So if something has an elemental hit, it'll do full damage to you, even if you have a lot of armor.
Are you covering Transcendence in this later?
No,
it's very
no,
advanced, so we don't have to.
Yes, I haven't built one myself, so
That's
I
fair.
kind of forgot.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
There is a way to make armor do elemental.
Yes, there is one way, and it's called Transcendence. It comes with some other problems, specifically degen, right?
Yes.
Yes. So there's
Agents will
it's
destroy you.
it's a tricky one. It's basically the pinnacle of. Actually, I should have had it in here, but God.
That's all right.
We'll get it at a different point. It's like it's one of the pinnacles of layered defense, basically, where everything has to come together if you want to survive while using it being very strong at the same time. Okay, on the armor one left here, I will say, one would think that when you have armor and you look at your physical damage reduction stat, that, oh, I'm going to take less damage from bleed. But no, you're not. Only from hit.
Yeah.
And bleed is not a hit, even if you get hit by a puncture. You would think, oh, I got hit by a physical attack. Now I'm bleeding for less because I have armor. No, you bleed for the full amount. Because even though that it requires you to be hit by something, well, except for corrupting blood, but apart from that, it requires you to be hit by something to get a bleed on you, right? They have to like hit you, and then you start bleeding, and then you run around, and it hurts. Ow, ow, ow. That actually ignores armor, because all the dot stats, ignite, bleed, poison, have been removed from the hit part due to double dipping. It was a while back, so that these stats were not overpowered anymore. So now the way you have to defend yourself against this is with the actual stat that is called physical damage reduction, which is not armor, because armor is physical damage reduction against hit. But I believe that they are both compounded on the same stat in the in-game character sheet. So it looks like it's the same, but they're not actually split. Am I right? I think I'm right. I think that's how it looks. Yeah. So you need endurance charges, basalt flasks, and other ways of getting, like, you can get the stat on gear, like the chest piece has it.
Yep.
You can get on influenced items, the neck, the shield. You can get a flask effect for your basalt, and the big one that people will probably know if they play a lot of endgame in PoE is the aura stagger and the guardian. And I think also the sign has it. Or does it?
I
Does it
can't
have the
remember
physical
without
damage?
looking it up.
It's unwavering faith. It's insane. It's basically, we won't talk about aura stacking right now, but you can buff a certain stat from an ascendancy called Guardian, which reduces the physical damage per aura. And it's really, really good. So there's quite a few places where you can get this stat, and it's just a better stat than armor because it protects you against everything. And there is also something called damage over time grind effects, specifically prevalent in let's see here, in the Uber Elder fight and the Elder fight. He'll put down splotches of physical damage stacking. And then there's corrupting blood as well, which this will help you against, which can be found on corrupting blood enemies. When you hit them, they stack corrupting blood on you, or if you kill packs of blues, which has corrupting blood, and fights like Cyrus. Chaos Golem also has it.
Yeah.
Actually, you can get and Necromancer. So it can be found like in a lot of different places, through the Ascendancy, through items, through flasks, through endurance charges. It's basically all over the place. And if you can stat this stack against physical damage, you will feel a lot more powerful. Much more reliable than armor. However, the armor wins on the smaller hits part here, because it's very hard to stack a high amount of physical damage reduction. So it's rare that you have more than like 30-40%. And on the very small hits, your armor can definitely mitigate more than that. But on the high hits, it's generally always better. So on like bossing.
And yeah, so generally, like a rule of thumb for me personally, depends a little bit of what build I'm playing. But especially for a lot of spellcasters, I'll end up having like a armor flask during the campaign. So when I'm doing like Act 1 to 10 and maybe like the first 5, 6, 7 tiers of maps, I'll make sure that I have a granite because it does so much work there. And then like
Yeah.
past tier 7 maps, a Basalt Fast can very, very easily like take over.
And this is especially true, I would say, for builds that don't have generic armor increases, where you don't keep getting nodes on the tree that increases your armor, because then your granite is not getting better. However, a basalt would then, at a certain
Yeah.
point, the enemies will hit harder and harder and harder, meaning your granite is going to be weaker and weaker and weaker because you're not investing into armor.
Yeah.
And so therefore, at a certain point, as it says, basalt starts winning.
Yeah, like a champion is an example where like if you're playing like Crown Slam or something, you're going to be getting percentage armor scaling on the tree, you're going to be getting armor on your ascendancy, and then armor starts becoming a lot better than, for example, for a trickster.
Yeah, sure. I think that kind of covers armor. Anything else we can add here?
Not without like super advanced stuff.
No. We'll get into a discussion forum on like the advanced stuff in the end, I think.
Yep.
Right. Now we come to the actual random stuff in PoE, which is
Oh,
block and
actually,
dodge.
let's talk about Molten Shell first.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
We can talk about Molten Shell.
Yeah, Molten Shell is a skill in Path of Exile. It's a defensive skill that is like, and there are several. A lot of them are based on their own level and power and just like flat reduction or based on your mana, etc. But Molten Shell is based on the armor that you have. Is it 70 or 80% now on normal Molten Shell? I know the Val Molten Shell was recently nerfed. Val Molten Shell is now 30%.
Yeah, it's not that high.
Okay, and normal Molten Shell is like 70 or 75. Molten Shell becomes very, very strong to have on
Yeah, that's true.
on characters that have high armor, and
Yeah.
a really strong thing to do on a lot of characters is to have a defensive skill on mouse button 1, because the defense skills are instant, and if you don't want to necessarily worry about like, oh, I'm about to take damage, let me push my defense skill, you can have it auto casting on mouse button 1, and you use it as a mouse button 1 to move still. They won't like interrupt that.
Yeah, because in anything that's instant, you can put on mouse button 1.
Yep.
That's the rule of thumb here. If it's instant, you can put it there with no problem. War cries you can if you have the instant war cry.
Yep.
But that's why people did that. Actually, so we can quickly cover the all the defensive ability or the defensive what's it called, cooldowns. So you could ask, should I use Molten Shell or Steel Skin, for instance? And this comes down to, well, how much armor do you have? Steel Skin is like always good, and especially it's good if you're playing like the lower HP characters, where your life pool is a little bit lower than normal. Like for instance, the right side of the tree might have a little harder time getting a higher life pool. So going from like, let's say that you're just early mapping and you can barely scratch together 3,000, and then you have like 1,200-1,500 from your Steel Skin. That's a very high increase to your overall amount of life.
Yeah, the only downside about Steel Skin is that relies very high on being leveled properly. So if you have a low strength requirement, that is a big downside.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, check out the different, I would say go and check out the different skills, defensive skills. What are they called? They have like a name. Guard skills?
Yeah, guard skills, that's it.
Yeah, go check out the guard skills and see what applies to your character. There's Arcane Cloak, Immortal Call, Molten Shell, Steel Skin, and like Molten Shell, Molten Shell. And then also Bone Armor, but that's for Necromancers, which is actually a good one, especially to help you keep your dudes alive as well. And Arcane Cloak is for anyone with like high mana. It's basically never a downside clicking it, in terms of as long as you can like recover your mana under it in the given time, then it's never a downside clicking it. Immortal Call is just very strong if you have a good cycling mechanic for endurance charges. Molten Shell, if you have high armor, gives you a very high life pool for the duration. Can be very strong. Some people, if you have a very high life pool already, some people might even not put it on your right click, and they would just use it as a preemptive measure or like as an extra life potion.
Yeah.
As a reactionary. Yes, you can do that as well. Sure.
The important thing to note for Immortal Call, I generally never like using Immortal Call on a character that can't very rapidly regenerate the endurance charges. If my Immortal Coil proccing ends up with me being 5 or 6 seconds without endurance charges, I will generally prefer to use Molten Shell or Steel Skin and keep my endurance charges up all the time.
Yes, I agree with this completely. That's what I would. Well, there's very few instances where I feel like you can justify Mortal Call. I would say you can do some cycling with the Mortal Call on Hierophant and on Chieftain. I think those are the two I would. And Jug. Yeah, you can probably use it on Jug. But Jug is a bit of a risky one because so much of your defense is based on you actually having your endurance charges up. So it can be, I think Jug can be a bit risky.
It depends how you build it, but yeah, I agree.
But, yeah. Otherwise, I would agree. Yeah. Yep.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. Okay. Block and dodge. So these kind of, even though you might think that these are completely different, they're actually more similar than like armor and evasion. Because just due to the how they work in terms of you getting hit, they're basically as random as they can be made. It's nothing is really true random because it's always based on something at a computer and a sound, something being like consumed and the numbers being generated, and that becomes like sent to the server and whatever. So like in that terms, it's like, if you want to argue that point, is anything truly random? I don't know. It doesn't matter. For the sake of argument, it's random. It's just, this is where the random stuff comes in. Block and dodge, they're very, very powerful, and it's the first real like layer of extra defense that you would probably assume, because I would probably call like the life. So there's the life pool, which is either I haven't talked about ES, but ES doesn't really matter here because it's just a different type of life. It's basically the same thing, just a slightly different. But in terms of how it actually works out in the game, if you have it, you have life. If you don't, you're dead. And that's kind of how it goes. And then you add like one layer being like your resist and your evasion armor. And then comes the second layer, which is your block dodge, I would say. That's generally how it goes. One of the things here that this does, and I think that's one of the main things, and I think this was shown very early on against a serie where people would stack armor and spell dodge, and they would basically they would cap that as high as possible, and that's how they would tank the early serie. And I think in Incursion League it became very prevalent again to stack like spell mitigation. There was like a time in between where after spells couldn't shotgun anymore. It basically fell out of favor that you needed to have spell dodge or like spell mitigation, because it was better to just have the life, and there wasn't really these kind of cascading things coming at you as much. But yeah, you can actually protect yourself against spells with this thing. So without anything, like just block and dodge as they're written, they go against attacks. However, then you can go on for block. It becomes spell block. You can get the Gladiator can convert 100% of your block into spell, or you can itemize for it through various means, through jewels, the tree, the shields, the items, the skills. That's how you would go about getting spell block. But you need to have both if you want to protect against both attacks and spells. You need to accumulate the stats for both. It's not just one going for both. If you just have the one, it's for attack.
And it's generally harder to build both spell block and spell dodge.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's very. With one caveat, I would say, the dodge is very easy to cheat your way into like a reasonable amount on top. if you consider Vol skills to have a factor here. So you can always run like Vol Grace, for instance, if you like that stuff. And there's like a few rolls that are quite high on gear, like the boots, for instance, and a few other places where you can get dodge. You can get like some cheap dodge here and there. And so an ascendancy, I think ascendancies here as well dictate a lot what route you're going with block and dodge. But in terms of how they actually work, you know, based on the percentage, there's a percentage chance that you will either block, dodge whenever, you know, you get hit by either an attack or a spell. And as this is like resist, basically, it's the same thing. The more you have, the higher the chance, and the more meaningful that chance becomes over time. I think one thing to note here is that well, I can actually I'll do something else here. Times 1, 2, 3. Right. So let's say you had 1% chance to block. Not blocking any of those with 1% chance to block in like 3 attacks would be a 4% chance. If you have 75, it's a 1.5% chance. So like you really want to go high on these stats because the chance of you getting consecutively hit, which is the whole point of this, goes down significantly the higher you get it. So you really want to, if you go for block and dodge, going halfway can be okay if you can get around it like cheaply. Especially if you're wearing a shield for some reason, you have to wear a unique shield, for instance. And there's no way around having that shield on. Well, then you have a base amount of block anyways. And then there's like, if you're just for mapping, like a basic roomies plus whatever else you can like just find here and there is a very low amount of investment for something that could be 50% damage reduction against attacks. So in that sense, it's very good. However, relying on block against, I would say, what do we call these attacks? Like death.
One shot?
Let's just call them death. Like say Shaper Balls, right? Shaper Ball is death.
Yeah.
Trying to rely, especially on hardcore, on having a small amount of block to hope that it'll get you through like a triple ball when you fuck up. No, you're gonna die. And you're gonna die pretty early if you keep getting hit by the triple ball attack.
Yep.
So it's, if you want to use this as a tool to avoid death, you know, especially in these instances, you want to stack as high as possible. And so one of the things the way you can look at this is, let's say I can always survive 2 balls and the third always kills me. Well, I could move out of the way and not get hit by the third. I could have my 98.5% chance to just block it. I could mash a potion in between. However, if I don't move that well, I'm not very fast. Sometimes it's really nice having a 98% chance of just, you know, preventing that thing from happening in the first place, so that it's less than 2 out of 100 that you actually die when this happens. Because you will make mistakes in PoE. That's just how it is. It'll happen. You'll make a mistake. And then if you have this, well, there's a good chance you don't die because you layered your defense properly. But sometimes it still gets you.
Do you want to talk about glancing blows here?
Sure. Glancing blows is a keystone which doubles your block value, but you take 65% of the damage when you get hit.
Yeah, I'll show it in game as well.
Yeah.
65%, and it's currently here. They moved this around a lot.
What? Have they?
Yeah, they moved it twice. Well, I mean, I guess it's just come in, but it's been moved once already since it's... Actually, I guess it's only been moved once. Yeah. They moved it away from the Awakener Jewel Ring.
Oh, so you mean move? Yeah.
I think they've only moved it once.
But it was the same spot, right? They just kind of like...
Oh no, it has been moved twice. Yeah.
Wasn't it the same spot? They just like nudge it away from the threat of hope.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, this the key difference here between block and dodge, I would say, is actually the on-hit effects. Like you could say that, oh, but dodge, you don't get stunned when you dodge, 'cause you don't, and you can get stunned by when you block. So you can get stun locked while blocking, which can be super annoying. So if you don't have a very high health pool or unwavering stance or some other way of dealing with the stun effects, especially if you have block on a CI character, because it's this is just real quick. Stun is based on your health pool. If you have a low health pool, you get stunned a lot because the hits will take a lot of your life away, unless you have a high mitigation. So the amount of life, total life you lose, will determine whether or not you get stunned.
Yep.
CI characters, even though they have like say 10, 12,000 ES, stun is still based on your life pool if you did not have CI, which generally is around 1,000. So if you get hit for 1,000 and you have 10,000 ES, well, then you get stunned because your entire life pool disappeared. So then you get stunned every time you get hit for 1,000. So that's super annoying on ES characters and CI characters. So that's something to just watch out for with block. Dodge does not have this problem. But other than that, then on-hit effects come in. And that means every time you block, there's an effect triggering. And the only effect that really matters right now, right, is like the life, ES, and mana gain. I don't think... Is there anything else we use? Like, there's some gimmick stuff with, like, shock and chill and whatever, but nobody really cares about that. It's more for gimmicks that you kind of get by chance.
It is worth bringing up the ES characters, or, like, Energy Shield has a natural avoidance of 50%. This even means that if early on in the game, if you have 0 Energy Shield, but you put on a chain belt, as long as that Energy Shield is up, you do get the 50% stun avoidance. You'll see most racers will pick up a chain belt early on.
Yeah. It's very convenient to remove 50% of the
But
stuns.
then for glancing blows, I would say the majority of the time I try to only use glancing blows if I can get life on hit or energy shield on hit. But I do still like just the consistency of reducing the damage. So even it's not as strong as before, but I do still quite like it. But it's hard.
I would agree with that. It's a very... If you go right past it, I would say it can be definitely a worthwhile pickup. I would say especially if you have a reasonable amount of spell block as well, just to get that consistency of it.
Yeah. And once you get the life on hit, then it's like then it's insane.
Yeah. Then because this is because we really like once you get those stats in, you really just want to have those like proc as often as possible. So you want to cap it out. Also, there is a opportunity cost here, which is what if I didn't have glancing blows? How much would I need to spend to cap my block? Especially when you have those life on hit,
life on block,
life on block effects, right? Do you really want to have to itemize 2-3 items and like maybe 5 nodes on the tree to cap yourself versus taking that one node and you can just forget about that and you have that effect coming in? Sure, you take more damage, but you have the consistency there, and a 35% damage reduction might still just be enough to save you in all the cases that you need anyways.
Yep. It's very, very strong.
Yeah. Another thing, like if you're only facing small hits, it's basically one of the ways you become immune to damage. In a lot of cases. Like you can, like let's say you're running around like a simulacrum with things going down, right? You're getting blasted from each and every side. There's like multi-proj in there and there's like 50 projectiles hitting you all the time. However, they're only hitting you for 500 and you have 10,000 life and 5% recovery. So now I'm regaining 500 every time. And as you can see, getting hit 3 times in a row is very unlikely. Imagine 4 or 5, it gets even less likely. So this will work, like at that level of hits, and so you're basically immortal against that against all the smaller enemies. you can just ignore them and just focus on the ones that could actually kill you, like the guy with the big axe that will slam you.
And then the main lesson here is that you do have multiple layer defenses. Like I've shown off a few times, like an essence strain character with glancing blows,
Yeah.
high dodge, high evasion, and then having max block with energy shield on block. And I've shown I don't have a character now that hasn't been like force respect since it's so old, but there was such an insane difference between standing still or moving. Because I can stand still and face tank with my potions up, but then while moving, plus all those defenses, I never take damage basically while moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving is very important. Sure. It's also why we haven't mentioned it, but the phasing flask, so you don't like run into monsters and get stuck. Because one of the things is that stopping at the wrong time in PoE can be a death sentence. You know, so running into a monster and then stopping, and then all the things that you're trying to avoid clash down on you, that kind of sucks. When you could have just run through and they just land behind you. Yeah, I think that's block and dodge.
Next up is recovery.
Yes. Another type of layered defense, which is, I think a lot of people discount this. However, it is very, very powerful. Not as powerful as it once was, but it's still very powerful. So the little picture you see here on the side, that's mainly for Leech, and I'll explain that in a little second. Life regen is very basic. It's a percentage of your total life pool that is regenerated every single second, all the time. That's basically what it is. If you could have a DPS counter, there is a way to play the game where, for a lot of bosses, you know that they will do X amount of damage per second generally, and so as long as you can get your regen to match that, you don't take damage. This doesn't really work in maps because there are too many monsters doing too much damage, which is where you need the other types of mitigation on top of that, because they do actually end up preventing more damage per second if you stand still. However, certain things just do X amount of damage, like ground effects, and consistent like slaps from a boss or whatever. Like they always do the same damage, barring a crit. So it can become very it'll be very nice just having that regen to basically out regen that, and you feel like, well, as long as I just move away from the big slams, we're fine. Just for regen. Chieftain specifically right now is very, very, very good. New vitality is insane.
Yeah.
If you want to see how good life regen is, put on the new vitality actual leveling, and you will, if you cap your resist and you have a reasonable amount of life, you feel like you're cheating. Like the first time I capped my resist, I went to a Dominus and I basically just stood still, didn't do anything, and he was just trying to beam me, slammed me a time like once or twice. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm regenning. So it's very good. Life regen. If you've ever just used a normal life flask, imagine that happening all the time without you having to click. That's basically how good life regen feels. So it's very, very nice. Now the second part of recovery, which is not life regen. Actually, block is also a type of recovery, but let's just leave that as that. So life leech is a bit weird. Let me try and go through the little thing over here. Right. So let's go on the top left corner. So a few things to know about life leech. Life leech is there is a, so on a life-based character, you can recover 20% of your total life pool per second. Every time you hit or you hit something be it a spell or an attack, you can recover up to 2% of your or that'll create an instance of life leech that can recover up to 2% per stack, right? So these like blood things up here are basically one attack, right?
That's 2% of your total life.
Yes. So you need 10 of them next to each other to recover the total amount of 20. Or you need to use some of the stats, which is, well, there's only one stat that'll make you do require less, which is the it's called? Oh, I can't even read this one.
I'm gonna try to make it bigger for stream.
Yeah, I'll try and do that. It's the increased total recovery per second from life leech. That's the stat. Because that magnifies the amount of the recovery from those instances. And it's the third, that's basically the third picture. Right? So let me go through these pictures one by one. Okay. So in number 1, increase maximum recovery per life leech. Wait, how is this? Oh, is that are there actually 3 different ones? Oh,
There,
God.
that's slightly bigger.
Oh, nice. Right. So, I believe that depending on the size of your hit as well, the blood banks become bigger, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, but they can never be bigger than 2%, can they?
No. It's like, because you can hit for a really small amount and it just fizzles immediately.
Yes.
Right. So the first stat that that's shown here is the increased maximum recovery per life leech. Basically means that you can have a weak hit, and that gets increased so that basically when you hit something, if you have a weak hit, there's not a lot of blood coming out. If you have a big hit, big splash. However, it all goes into one blood bag, and that blood bag only has one funnel that remains the same size. However, if there's not a lot of blood in the bag, it runs out very quickly, right? So you would have to attack very fast to have them all running at the same time, otherwise they start running out.
Leech is very complicated in Path of Exile.
Number 2, okay, if you attack fairly slowly, but you can make sure that the bags are large enough, but you can only ever get to 5, then you could also increase the total recovery per second from life leech. Then you would magnify those 5. So normally they can only funnel out 10% of your total life pool. However, you can make them go to 20 with 100% increase of the stat. So now you'd only need to hit 5 times per second rather than 10 to make these run. And then there's the last one, which is the increased maximum total recovery per second from life leech, which is how much total can go through into your life pool. That's like, you can see the big widened gap into your life pool. That means that the more of this stat, you can increase that 20%, which is the normal cap. You can make it go to like 30-40%. And Vol Pact, I believe, just doubles this.
Yes.
Regardless of how, like, if you had 30, it goes to 60. If you have 40, it goes to 80. If you have 20, it goes to 40. So it just doubles that.
This is not on the exam.
No. This is it's not that.
It is.
I know.
It is.
It's a bit complicated. Once you get it, it'll probably click. But yeah, basically, if you attack slow with hard hits, you need to have that stat that gives you that magnifies, like the one in the second one, that magnifies the amount of blood that can come out of any bag. If you can easily get the full amount running through, then what you're looking for is the thing in number 3. And the thing in number 3 is always useful if you rely on Leech, by the way. That just increases how much Leech you can do all the time.
And
if you can fill it.
And the stat at number 4 is the number 1 thing you want whenever possible. You can get it on like Elder Belts, etc. Chieftain has it, and it's increased life recovery rate. It works on Regen, it works on Leech. It's just a very, very strong stat. I generally very rarely bother with max life recovery or any of the other ones, and I generally will always just try to get life recovery rate because that is the strongest stat.
There is one other way of increasing number 3 that is very important. And that's actually just increasing your total life pool. Because increasing your total life pool means that the percentage, the absolute value gets higher and higher and higher because it's a percentage of your total life pool. If you have 1,000 life, it's 200. If you have 10,000 life, 2,000. That's why you see people when they go for like Regen and Leech builds and Slayers, right? That's why you see them running around with 8,000-9,000 life on these builds. It's because that is the most efficient way of increasing the stat. Because not only does it increase the leech that you're getting, it's also just giving you more life. And having more life means that you survive longer. It's really good.
Somebody pointed out a really important thing for number 4, the increased life recovery. It does not show up in game. You can't see it.
Yeah, again,
it doesn't. So like if you see that your life regen normally is 1,000, right? You're regening 1,000 life per second, and you put on a let's say you stack loads of life recovery gate equal to 50%. Now you are regening 1,500 life per second now, but your in-game is still gonna show you 1,000 because fuck you.
Yeah. The in-game stats, they're not very good. Hopefully that'll be better in PoE too, but one can only wish. But yeah, the best stat to get in general for these kind of builds is exactly that, the 4th one, increased life recovery. It's really strong. It's really, really strong. Is it still on the Watcher's Eye?
Yes, it's just got nerfed a bit.
So yeah, belt Watcher's Eye.
And then
chest as well.
And then ES is the same simple stuff that Nugi just explained, but it's 10%.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Unless you have Ghost Reaver? Yes. Yeah. Unless you have Ghost Reaver, then you can double it and make it like life and 20%. Yep. But there's a downside with the less energy shield recharge rate.
That's it.
But yeah, everything like life and ES, basically the mechanics are the same for the most part when it comes to stuff.
Yeah.
Like except for the things that explicitly said. Oh, we could go like Overleech with Soul Tether.
Mm-hmm. And Slayer.
You can do Slayer. I'll do Soul Tether.
It's the same thing, but sure.
Is it?
Basically, effectively. It's not always important to explain exactly the difference and why. Especially since it's a 101 lesson.
That is
It's a 101 lesson. They just need...
That is true. Right. Well, Overleech is basically how does it... Right. Whenever you're... Okay, so whenever this bubble down here goes to full, leech effects disappear. They just disappear. They don't exist anymore. Whenever your life pool is 100%, they're gone. And you need to take a new hit, and you need to start leeching again for them to start building up again. And you're leeching. Overleech. Is it called Overleech on the Slayer?
Yes.
Not leech effects are not. No, Overleech is different. I guess. Oh no, we call it Overleech. They always call it Overkill. No, let's just call it Overleech. Yeah. Overleech is the effect of leech effects are not removed at full life. So think about what that does. If they're not removed at full life, that means that they're actually still running while you're at full life. That means the moment you take damage, they're all still there and they'll start refilling your bank without you having to build them up first. The great thing about this is, let's say that you're whacking away, big boss. You see big stupid hit coming in, need to dodge. You run out of the way. Got hit anyways. Half my health is gone. doesn't matter. My leech is still running and I'm full life again. However, if you don't have overleech and that happens, you're like, oh no, I have to go back and hit him again. And that's really scary. So that's why it's really nice having overleech when you're that kind of character.
Yeah. And you can get this both from Slayer and you can also get it from Soul Tether. Soul Tether gives you, like, you start with 0 energy shield, and then when your life gets full, it starts leeching energy shield instead.
Yes.
So that basically effectively gives you the same thing where you're always, even if you only have like 10 energy shield, you're always getting that Slayer Overleech. So some people feel like Soul Tether isn't worth it if you can't get a decent energy shield buffer, whereas Soul Tether is actually okay even if you only had 1 energy shield, because the main thing you want is just that Overleech effect. And you can also get that same thing now from a Glorious Vanity of Anahui or something. I think it's Anahui.
Something like that. Is it Anahui?
Anahui.
Sounds right.
Anuha? Ahawaha. Can't remember the exact name. Starts on A. Awana.
Oh.
Glorious Vanity of Moana.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
You're welcome.
Wow. Yep.
It's very, very strong. You'll see probably something like 70% plus of hardcore soul self-fund racers will try to use a Soul Tether or a Glorious Vanity of Awana if they can. Very strong.
It's always a consideration. Definitely. Yeah, so that's...
And you can leech with spells too, yes.
Yes, you can. The only problem with spells is actually finding the leech somewhere.
Yeah.
That's why
Leech on boots.
Yeah, for mapping. For bossing, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
For bossing, generally you see spell leechers be like chieftain, or people with like watcher size, I guess, maybe.
You can use amulets.
Yeah, amulets as well helps.
You can get like 0.5.
Isn't it 0.2? I think it's 0.2. It's very hard to leech enough on those builds, so you have to have... 0.5. Oh, okay. Yeah. It can be hard to recover enough life with those, having such little life leech. So you need to do a lot of damage.
Yep.
And hit fast for those to work. But it
really
can work.
Spells.
Yeah. It's very powerful once it actually starts working. It's very powerful. I mean, you saw the easy way with the chieftain with cremation. Oh, so nice. When it's just sitting there leeching and hitting all the time. Yeah. But yeah, so recovery is one of those things that's just really nice to have on top of everything else. You want to have a reasonable amount of recovery, at least if you want to have a smooth experience, and not constantly having to click your potions and all that. Making sure your recovery is working is key, because you will get hit every once in a while, and sometimes you run out of flasks. So making sure that you can make your life go back up to full is just nice. So yeah, at the end of all of this, after your evasion, your armor, your block, your dodge, and everything, still need to have your life being 100.
Yep. Simple and easy stuff.
Yep. Very simple. Just like it.
Next slide.
Yeah, let's go.
Other damage reduction stats. This is very important. Oh, I like this. This explains further. Nice.
Right. There are other damage reduction stats in the game as well. So one thing to note here first is that there's a distinction between reduced and increased, and less and more. This is specifically a PoE thing. Other games does it too, and I think it's because they've seen PoE do it, so it's kind of just become the standard. Not all games does this though, so you might not be aware. So less and more is always multiplicative. It's not matter what we're talking about, is always multiplicative. Reduced, if it's within the same category, and increased is always additive. So what does this mean? That means that, say you have a stat like reduced, where is it? Reduced elemental damage taken, right? that can be found on like nodes on the tree, like Jock has it, Pathfinder has it, but that, say you paired it with a wise oak, that would then stack. And it would combine into one stat. So let's say you have 15% from the wise oak, you have like 6% on the ascendant tree, well, it becomes 21. If these were both less, let's see, what would that become? Oh, I can't. That would be 0.80. That would be 20.1 instead of 21. Right? So there's a diminishing returns. There's diminishing returns when with less damage taken. Whereas with the increases, like the additive stuff, it just all stacks. Meaning that the increased, like with reduced damage taken, the increased stuff is always better to get. Or the reduced damage taken stuff is always better if you're looking at them 1-to-1. However, not everything is not everything is equal here. So, for instance, Fortify. Fortify is 20% less damage taken. However, there are many ways to increase that buff effect. And so the increased effect of Fortify actually does increase that less damage taken. And because you're just increasing the effect of it, it's not a it doesn't have diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
It just gets larger and larger within that one bracket. But if you're to say using a ruby flask with like less fire damage taken, and you did the fortify on top, those two you would have to like multiply those two together, and they wouldn't stack, and so the total effect would then be less than if you could add. So that's like important to note. One thing, then comes a little fun one here. So, well, first we'll just go through in big order. So reflect damage taken. There's another. This one will trick a lot of people. So if you ever use this stat, listen closely, especially if you're on hardcore. If you use the let's see here, reduced reflected X type of damage taken, be very mindful that there are also things in the game that increase your damage taken. So if you manage to get 100% reflect elemental damage taken, or whatever that's called, and let's say you're doing fire damage, right? You're like a fireballer, dude. You're just blasting everywhere. You're doing a flat math because, dude, I have 100% reflect damage taken. You know what? Let me try and put on the sextant. And the sextant says increased fire damage taken. Well, if that has ever happened to you, well, then if it hasn't, I'll tell you what happens. It'll make that stat go to 90 instead of 100 because it's all additive. So increased damage taken, if you had 100% reduced, then you just increase that by 10. Now you're at 90% reduced. Unlucky. You're now dead because you killed yourself to reflect, because these stats don't care about you having 100%. This is the same thing if you stand on shocked ground and you don't have shock immunity. The same thing will happen. If you get vulned and you have the physical reflex stat, you will die again, because that increases the physical damage taken.
Yep. I actually never died to that, surprisingly.
What was it? I don't remember. What you died to something.
Very specific there, Nugi.
Oh yeah. No, but don't you remember the? It was the. So you're playing that. It was like it was a block character. I think you had Sebakwa. It was like super tank. You're very happy. You got vulned in a map.
The like 3K nearly immortal character I had?
Yeah.
This is my flask burned up.
Oh yes.
That's
just flask. Yeah. Oh, but then you also got vuln, right? No, it was your curse immunity, and there was a vuln map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Just scary.
That was sad. But yeah, no, it's very, very dangerous. Shock has killed me a lot.
Yeah.
It's the thing it's the thing I like
Shock is very
underestimate the
deceiving.
most.
Yeah. They made the high level maps shock higher now as well, right?
Yep.
It used to be fairly simple to mitigate. Are there any other like? I mean, basically, so the most important thing here to note when it comes to these other damage reduction stats that are like kind of everywhere, it's also if someone remembers that shield Steel used as well for a while, he the Harbinger shield with damage reduction. So that was like a way to become near immortal as well in the league. Is just stack damage reduction. They nerfed that as well.
Yeah.
So all these like immunity tricks have progressively getting nerfed, so they're harder and harder and harder to get, and to maintain at a high level.
Well, I can continue on this explains further bit.
Yeah.
Something I
Go.
want to talk about is the damage taken as fire, for example.
Oh, that's conversion.
Oh, is there a next slide for that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
That's
thought that was going to be
conversion.
this explains further. That's fair.
Oh no. That's conversion.
Okay.
That's something else. That's like another segment. There's a lot of different things. PoE is complicated.
Yeah.
God damn it. No, other damage reduction stats is basically just like that's referring to like all the things you find on the tree. It just says like damage taken, less damage taken, the flasks and how they interact, and the difference between the two. I might not have put everything together in the right order, but yeah.
No, that's all right.
We can move on. I mean, this one's fairly simple. It's just basically to get down like that certain. Basically, if you can add all the reduced ones together up to 100, you're immune. And that's what people managed to do. Almost. I don't know if they quite got there. It's very close. If they didn't get there.
I think there's one left. I think you can still do the 1% less damage taken per leech or something. Or there's
Yeah.
while
Yeah. That's
leeching.
yes, you can.
I think there's one immortality thing still left in the game.
It's very tedious to do.
Yeah, they nerf it very quickly.
Yeah. Well, it took them a while with resist, but after they started bonking on resist, they just started like
Oh,
shooting everything.
Strength of Blood has apparently been nerfed as well.
Oh, okay. So yeah, all the additive stuff can actually get you to 100 if the game allows you. If there's enough things in the game. All the less stuff is all multiplicative to each other, so you can never reach immortality with that unless it actually reaches 100 exactly on that one stat. That's what you need to know here.
Damage conversion.
Damage conversion is stupid.
I love it.
In terms of understanding it. I mean, I guess it's more like, I think doing damage with damage conversion is stupid. I like it defensively.
Yeah.
A lot, actually. Yeah.
I would agree.
I would agree. Yeah. So damage conversion, there are multiple types of this. Let's just start with the one thing that a couple of years ago was like very prevalent. It's still prevalent. It's still very strong, but the fist to lightning. So damage conversion is in essence you take a damage source and you shift it to something else. They call it shifting. So you can shift physical damage into an elemental damage. So say with lightning coil, lightning. You can shift it with Sebaqua from elemental into chaos. You can shift it from like, what is it, cold into fire or whatever with what are those amulets called? The ones everyone loves now. Yeah.
Avian talismans.
Yeah, the talismans, the avian one. So there's like a lot of damage shifting. So why would you want to damage shift? And it's actually one of the most powerful defensive stats in the game if you can manage to get there. One of the reasons is the fact that it allows you to defend multiple damage types with one stat. That is very powerful because if you can just stack a lot of things, it's a lot easier to stack one thing rather than three things at the same time, and then you just shift everything else onto that. Let's say you have very high resist, right? But you have no armor. You have barely any evasion, and you don't really have physical mitigation, right? But you get like 90% resist. Well, what if we could shift physical damage into elemental damage? Well, you could do that with Lightning Coil, Taste of Hate, Watcher's Sign, all those. Let's assume that you but yeah, just as it's written here, if you can actually convert 100% and you have 90% resist, well then you basically have 90% physical mitigation against hits. Done.
And there's another reason to do it as well, which is penetration is always on
Yes.
the core one. So
Yes.
a quick example here is the Shaper Balls. They do cold penetration. But if on a character you have 100% cold damage taken as fire or lightning, then those balls, they don't penetrate you. They'll still be doing like the same like initial damage, but that's actually quite low because it's scaled around being the reason why it being so damaging is because they penetrate. Do you think the Shaper have 25% pen or something?
Yes. I mean, it comes back to the very first slide, right? With the resist. If you only have 50% versus 75, you're taking double damage.
And it's even more punishing if on a normal character you're used to having like maybe you don't have like a large amount of total HP. Like maybe you have like only 4,000 or 5,000 life, but you have 90% resist. Going from 90 to 75% then on a low HP character, you're dead in one shot.
Yep. Yeah, there's like a few ways to get this. It's mainly through items. There isn't anything on the tree to get this stuff. It's like, yeah, it's through items and jewels and a flask. Those are your like ways to get it, right? Yeah. And then for the elemental to elemental to
Elements as well.
or to chaos. Wait, what? Sorry.
You said life. What items did you say?
Just items.
Oh,
Items in general.
and ascendancy.
I mean, right, there is one. Yes, Chieftain has it. This is actually quite underrated. I think
It's really good,
having
yeah.
that on there. Yeah,
The-
the 10%.
The reason why the Chieftain Ascendancy is so strong as well as a defensive mechanic, it's 10% of physical damage taken as fire, but then on that same note, it also has, if you've taken fire damage recently, it's like extra recovery, but that means that
Yeah.
also any physical damage will then be fire. So you basically are always taking fire damage.
Yes. There's very few things where you can't trigger it. It gets a little annoying to be a chieftain in if you're struggling on like Uber Elder and you're trying to run around dodge, and the only thing you get hit by is the balls, because they don't trigger the
Yep.
extra regen. So
Now-
certain boss fights you should be a little worried about figuring out how to trigger it, but in general, you're
An important rule of thumb for damage conversion is that nearly all damage conversion is on hits. It does not include degens.
Yes.
There is
Yes.
a timeless
Yeah.
jewel called Zibakwa, which is a glorious vanity of Zibakwa. That is actually including degens, which makes
yes.
it was insanely strong before. It's been nerfed. Still pretty strong. Nowhere near as strong as it used to be. But that does convert degens as well. So a lot of characters can have like an insane weakness to degens because you might not, if you're relying a lot on damage conversion, you might just get at like deep delves or in like high maps, you might just vaporize to degens.
Yep. I would say specific with damage conversion, if it's specifically physical that you're converting, bleeds become very scary because you have that high res, so you're fine against burns. But your physical damage mitigation is all against hits. It's like you're basically a full armor. Like it's the same thing as being a full armor character. You have nothing against. You just don't really have anything against the physical damage over time.
Mhm.
So it's very, very scary. However, if you like tanking shaper slams, this is a very good way of doing it.
Yeah.
You just stand there all day.
It's something that makes the avian talisman very strong too, because like and talismans, honestly, they've brought them back so well. Talismans went from being total shit and just alteration charge to being like very, very exciting. There's obviously like several that have really good implicits. So if you
Mhm.
do get a strong talisman with good stats, they are generally pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. Anything else I wanted on this one? I don't think so. I think that covers it, because then like, going further with this is basically starting to like, you know, craft them all and go
Mhm.
through all the min-maxing of how to put it all together. So just understanding how it works.
This is
It's
my
important.
favorite slide.
Which one?
Why is champion so good?
Oh. So this is actually, I think this is something that is important to understand about defense as well. Consistency. Knowing that things are up when you want them up. Right now, Fortify is an incredibly powerful mechanic, because it's one of the few damage reduction stats that is like globally applied, except for dots. Like it helps against everything, and you can buff it up to a really high level. Like a lot of the other stats have been nerfed a lot, and it's very hard to stack enough of it. But stacking Fortify effect is not that difficult, and getting like getting your Fortify to like 30 to 40% is not impossible at all. That's really strong. However, what you see a lot is people, when they try and use Fortify, is that they lose Fortify and then they die.
Yep.
So what does Champion do? It gives you permanent Fortify. There is no hoping to hit your attack. There's no vigilant striking. There's none of that. And not only that, it also gives you stun immunity and a ton of armor and evasion at levels that are high enough to basically take you all the way to like T16s. Because you just get like that amount stacked with any extra is just enough for you to feel comfortable all the time.
Yeah.
You always have enough armor, you always have enough evasion, and you always have that damage reduction so you don't get one shot. It's just really nice, consistent.
One thing I want to mention, which we actually almost forgot about on the last slide, talking about damage conversion, which is actually something I should have remembered when you pointed out my very low life character. That was on paper, because we didn't know this at the time, but I basically had a character, and I think I only had as little as 2,000 or 3,000 life. And it was like, it was face tanking Uber Elder. On paper, it was almost immortal. The devs later explained why it wasn't, because you cannot do conversion twice on damage taken.
Yes.
So when I theory crafted this, and in POB at the time, I think it's been updated now, but in POB, it showed that I could do physical damage taken as fire, taken as chaos. So I had 90% fire res, 90% chaos res, and I was basically going to be almost completely immortal. But since I can't convert twice, I was actually quite a lot less tanky than I thought.
Only once.
And it was still like farming Uber Elder and stuff, only with like 2,000 or 3,000 life. I think the highest hit I took from Uber Elder was like 200. But against like quite a lot of the other stuff, I ended up like, well, I was very, very untanky without flasks, and that's what killed me.
Yeah.
And there's one really, really strong thing with damage conversion as well. It's pretty hard to get damage taken as chaos. But if you get that on an energy shield build, that damage is just completely mitigated. It's gone. It doesn't exist.
Like the bow.
Yeah. Darkstorm.
Yeah.
And Incandescent Heart.
Yes.
And helmets. But that's only on CI when you have 100% resist. Does not work on low life.
The stat is also good with Sabako builds in general.
Yes.
If you're non-CI.
And Hunter Chest. It's a very, very nice stat.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything more you wanted to say about Champion?
No. I didn't really go into it too much. It was one of the not too well thought out slides. It was like, I just thought I'd mention it because consistency is important. And, you know, I think it's a good example of one of the ascendancies, like why is it considered so good, even though you look at it at face value, it might not seem as good. Like even if you don't even take the Master Metal into account, right? The whole Impale stuff, champion is still very good, just for the sake of consistency.
Mhm.
Like if you ever go champion and you start leveling with a champion and you get the first node, the unstoppable hero, and you have Fortify up, yeah, never getting stunned and having 1,000 armor evasion, you feel immortal going through the whole thing.
Yeah. Endgame layer defense / discussion time.
Yes.
So yeah, itemization, aura stacking, CI. We could also talk about. We actually didn't talk about imbalanced guard. We could talk about that.
Oh, that one? Yeah.
I haven't used it much myself, but it is fairly powerful. It's a keystone that says 100% chance to defend with double armor, and then maximum damage reduction for any damage type is 50%.
Yes.
Pretty sure that does not apply to resists.
No, it's not resist. This is just for armor.
Yeah.
Just for armor. So it'll do. The way I envisioned this the first time on some builds was very high block characters that have a reasonable amount of armor can take good advantage of this, because whenever that hit comes through, the damage is mitigated better, and you're already pretty safe against smaller hits because you have that block.
Yeah.
So what it does is that it makes the maximum damage reduction 50. That means that the smaller hits are gonna hit you a lot harder, especially if you get like a cascade of hits coming through.
Yeah.
Hitting you, like, I don't know, whatever, porcupines, for instance. If there's enough of them, like, it could be really bad not mitigating a high enough amount there.
Yeah. And an example of when it would be bad, if you have like a Juggernaut with like 90% damage reduction,
Yeah.
you're deleting 40% of your defenses.
Yeah.
Actually, technically more.
I really saw this working on like a a necromancer that went down to get call to arms and grab the stuff around there that wasn't really armor stacking, but was block stacking, you know, with call to arms, and I was right there next to it anyways. It felt kind of nice, maybe as a pickup for that.
Mhm.
That was like one of the few, because you can't have a build that stacks a lot of reduced physical what's it called, like if you're using endurance charges, this actually limits the amount that you can get physical damage reduction at 50. You can't go above that.
Yep.
So even if you, it's very specific what builds that could use that, and it's very niche.
I've actually never done aura stacking.
Really?
Never done it. After Winter Orb, I've tried being very, very careful about playing insane meta builds that are all purpose, because after Winter Orb, it ruined the game for me for around 6 months.
Wow.
So I've been trying to stay away from all purpose builds.
Yeah. I mean, aura stacking really is the all-purpose build. So if you're right now in PoE, if you want to look at the pinnacle of builds right now, I would say the aura stacker is the one. So what it does, it combines a very high health pool. It combines 90% resist, maximum block, and then actually also max dodge, I think, with Ball Grace. So you get max res, max physical damage reduction, high life pool, insane recovery as well, by the way. You just get everything in one
immunity
go.
and
Ailment immunity.
And you can build it with Transcendence. There's you can
Yeah.
do everything.
Yeah, you can. I haven't looked into that yet. That's why I didn't really mention that stuff, because I haven't looked into like the new ways.
And you get an insane amount of damage.
Yes. That's the thing in general in PoE. It can be very hard to find the balance between getting all the defensive layers right and then also doing the damage. That's the real tricky part. So you kind of have to like pick the right defensive tools for your build that'll do the job that you need it to, while at the same time have the damage.
I would
That's
not
like-
recommend
that's
trying to
key
tank
when-
the meteor from Cyrus though.
No, that's pretty hard. That thing hits very, very hard.
And Rain of Stars.
Oh yeah. Does that actually do more damage total?
No, technically
hit-
not. The problem with
Oh.
Path of Exile, and we haven't talked about it too much. We haven't actually talked a lot about crit.
Oh right.
However,
Yeah.
crits in Path of Exile is insanity. Because Path of Exile has decided that if a multi-ability, like something from one cast crits, everything from that cast crits. That means
Yep.
that if you see the Exile that throws Valspark, and that Valspark, even if that Exile only has a 5% chance to crit, right? So it will barely ever crit. When that hits, or when the crit hits, every single projectile from that Exile is going to be a crit. If Rain of Stars from Cyrus crits, every single meteor fragment will crit. That wiped out one of my like tankiest characters.
Yep.
Which normally I could just face tank everything. Same with the Shaper balls, right? There's 3 balls. If one of them crits, they're all a crit. So it's like sometimes nice when you're a player, but I mean, in my opinion, bosses shouldn't have crit.
Actually, I agree with that.
I
That
would
is
rather
stupid.
just have consistent high damage. It's just like
Yeah.
so unbalanced. And yeah, it's crazy. It's insanity.
No, crit is pretty silly. There is one of the if you one of the best ascendancies against crit is actually assassin. It's kind of
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, for the one that crits the most, it's the one that's the best against it as well.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense, but
Because Assassin has, while you're elusive, you can't be critical.
yeah, it's very, very nice, and especially, and I think this actually goes in. So that stat is so good for assassin specifically because it's generally a right side of the tree build that doesn't that generally relies a lot on dodge and such. And remember what we said about dodge and evasion is that it doesn't really give you a flat damage reduction. So what does that mean? That means that whenever you get hit for the full amount. So getting crit for the like on top of that is devastating.
Yep.
Which is why it's so important that you have that crit
And
mitigation.
and Assassin is the only character I run crit maps on. Crit is
Yeah.
just like one of the easiest ways. Like it's the second, in my opinion, second or third most dangerous map mod. The most
Yeah.
dangerous being lesser multiple or like monsters fire 2 additional projectiles. That one is just insane.
Yeah.
But crit is so scary because you're suddenly taking unpredictable bursts of damage.
Yeah. And it's just it only needs to like catch you off guard once from like one dangerous monster. And the worst thing about the crit mod on the map specifically is that the increase to its crit chance is so high.
Yeah.
So the monsters have such a much higher chance to actually crit you.
Yep. It's very, very scary. And there are several monsters that do have like the multiple attacks per hit. I remember something that's killed me several times is like the Marikath archers, because they fire 10 hits. And when those crit then all of those 10 hits are crit. So they're just like,
Yeah.
"Brr-pup-pup," and they're just no
They
scope
hurt.
you. Very mean.
We didn't really cover CI much. I think to like give people a brief overview what CI is. CI is basically people stacking energy shield. For all intents and purposes, energy shield works the same except for a few things. As life. Chaos damage goes through energy shield. So you need to know what monsters do chaos damage if you're building energy shield. You need to know that, or you need to have chaos inoculation or very high chaos resist. But even high chaos resist is not always enough when you are doing like a hybrid character that has life and energy shield. So CI becomes very good for that. We covered the stun earlier, so like you still get stunned based on your life pool. However, you do have a 50% chance to avoid that stun as CI. So you don't really get stun locked that much, but you do get consistently stunned, which is super annoying. Another thing that ES has going for it, it'll recover itself all the time unless if you have recently taken damage. So the moment you take damage, status interrupt. Actually, we figured this one out. The recovery is actually always happening. Even when you're full ES, you're still actually recovering ES. Like that thing is ticking under it. It doesn't really matter in any practical sense. It was just kind of funny to figure that out. And then at the moment you take damage, that is interrupted for like 4 seconds. Well, it depends on your recovery. There's a stat in the game, so that can start again.
CI, and an important thing to know, a lot of new players will always ask if like blue life is better than red life, and they are 1-to-1 the same. So if you have 10,000 life or 10,000 energy shield, they are the same. But let's see, let me log on an energy shield character here, and we can show a little bit of like different, I think what is a good example character.
I mean, ED is always a good example with it.
I think that's what I'm logging on. So here I'm logging on an Essence Drain character, and even without auras, you can see that it has nearly 9,000 life. Here with Discipline on, I have 10,000 life. So there's a couple of really, really good benefits to being CI, which is this node up here called Chaos Inoculation. Maximum life becomes 1, you're immune to chaos damage. It actually doesn't give you any more energy shield, it used to, but it doesn't actually give you an energy shield, but it's so much easier to get blue life than it is red life. So there's a couple of things for this. There's no life aura. There's no aura that gives you life, but there is Discipline, which gives you, whatever level this is, it gives you 231 energy shield. And then you can see, bad example, you can see on like multiple of my items, you can get 200 or even 300 sometimes energy shield on one item, whereas getting, well, you can never get 300 life on an item except for Comb's Heart, which you're punished with no sockets and it's 500 flat life and nothing else, right? Yeah. So like these boots, 200 energy shield, my shield, 360. Well, that's a nice shield. And then Trickster has a really, really cool defensive mechanic, which is Escape Artist, 1% max energy shield per 6 evasion on the body armor. So the total energy shield for a Trickster on this armor is actually 737. So that's 200 more than a Comb's Heart, but we still get to have links and stuff.
And resist. And evasion.
Yep.
It's really good.
So like on energy shield characters, you can just get so much. Like throughout the game, sometimes you can get as much as like 15 to 20,000 energy shield, whereas I think the highest life, including like old legacy gear that you can't get anymore, is like 18 or 20,000. I think is the highest I've seen. Yeah. And that's like no damage nodes and shit. So you can get a lot more blue life than you can red life.
How much AES did they manage to get on the stacker? Like 143,000 or something?
Yeah.
For ES. Compare that to the 18,000.
I know.
Yeah. No, for endgame, ES becomes king simply due to how PoE is itemized.
Yeah.
It's not because red is better than blue or blue is better than red. It's simply because of the way the PoE itemizes.
Yeah.
So knowing that, you'll...
Now, there are 2 other subjects that we didn't cover that I do want to talk about. And that is your mom.
Okay.
And
she's doing fine.
Minor matter and also agnostic.
Oh, right. Oh, I can't. How do I forget?
I don't know. That's why I've never done agnostic, so I really want you to explain it for everyone.
Oh, I've done it.
Well, I always feel like you're always the expert on your mom and agnostic. So
yeah. Sure. Well. Basically, okay, is there... Okay, I'm not sure if there's other... No, okay, so MOM, what it does is it takes a percentage of the hit and it applies it to your mana. And it essentially makes your mana part of your life pool in that way. So, if you always have some mana, right? So even by default, if you just have no mana being reserved, so it does come with the cost of not reserving your mana and figuring out a way to recover your mana. But let's say that you just have by default 1,000 mana lying around at endgame that's not being used for anything. That could become part of your life pool with MOM. Again, if you get hit, it disappears, and if you're using it to cast spells, it's annoying. But let's just say you figured that out and it's not a problem, then it's a very strong way of adding to your total life pool. Also, they introduced Archmage, so it's actually also great defensively now, especially after they changed that. It became a lot more prevalent since the days of the old EB, MOM, and Arctic Armor. But we don't have that anymore, sad face. Yeah, so it basically becomes a way to split.
Mom does not work on Energy Shield.
Yes. No. So the way it's if you read the node, it'll actually explain it to you. That's basically a way you can look at a lot of things in PoE. It's like if you just read what it says, it'll explain it to you. But 30% damage is taken from mana before life. Right? It states life, which is important here. It's actually can be a good thing that it doesn't. Well, it kind of depends, because you can have like you can have your energy shield kind of disappearing at the same time as your life, and it becomes kind of what's that thing called where 50% of damage goes through energy shield?
It's the Glorious Vanity of Doriani. I can't remember what the actual keystone's called, but it gives you, is it 30% or 20% of your life is extra energy shield, but 50% goes through. Corrupted Soul.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting thing, right? If you have, because it can be hard to build up, say, a life pool or a life pool under energy shield. But with that stuff, you could pair that together and you can have a reasonable amount of ES, some of the damage going through and then being split between your life and your mana, and then also being taken on the ES.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cool. It's not really being used by anyone, but I think it's a cool concept. But yeah, you can split the life and the mana, and then there are stats in the game to further the splits. So the minor mana node is 30%. Then there's 10% in Hierophant. You can get 10%, I believe, on, or is it only 8 now? I don't remember. On Watcher's Eye. So you can also get there. You can get stuff on the amulet, and basically.
Cloak of Defiance.
Oh yeah, and Cloak of Defiance. Does that give you 20?
Gives you Mom
nodes?
and 10%.
Yeah, but you can also get the 10% on a Shaper chest. So it's not always that. It's not always better to use the Cloak of Defiance. Cloak of Defiance is always strong on these builds because it also gives you good mana recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you shift it, you can actually make it so that the majority of the life pool becomes your mana, which is very interesting. I think I've seen quite a few go to like 60%, right? I think that's where most of those.
I don't think you can get 70, maybe.
No,
you can get 60 for sure.
Yeah, and then the stuff that comes after is the gimmick stuff with the power charges.
Yeah.
That nobody really uses because it's not worth it. But then once it becomes like 60%, that's quite a big deal. Because you can stack mana to like very high amounts. If you stack your how much does it go? It goes like if you get 10,000 mana, how much life do you need for that with 60?
Oh, to cover it?
Yeah. This is the other way around.
Yeah. I'm terrible at the math.
I don't remember. I can't. My head. I'm thinking about too many things at the same time. It's just if you have 50% mana, 50 life. Let's just make it easy. You basically need 5,000 life and 5,000 mana, and you can combine the two into one life pool of 10,000, and it's really nice.
Yeah.
And a 10,000 life pool is very high, and getting a 5,000 life is not that hard. And then if you can then also offensively benefit from having the mana, really good build that can come out of that. It's why all the you've seen like a lot of cremation necromancers.
And a lot of people using agnostic.
Yeah, agnostic is very powerful. Basically, what happens is whenever your life pool is not full, it'll transfer 20% of your current mana to life. That's all it does. That's a lot of mana gone per second. However, it's a lot easier to stack on these builds high mana regen versus high life regen. So because it's so much easier to stack mana regen, you basically you get a different way of achieving life regen at a much higher rate that you would normally be able to.
And it's
which is
it's
incredibly
max
powerful.
mana, not current.
Yeah. Current max max mana, not current at all. Forget current. I don't know why I said that. Max mana. It's just max mana.
It's PoE.
It's always, yeah. I think I read something else at the same time. It's very, very powerful. And you can use it alongside like flasks and stuff. Like there's a lot of ways. It also allows you to use a life and a mana potion at the same time to recover life or your life pool, which is another thing that's really nice. Indigon helps as well. Yeah, Indigon, Pathfinders, mana potions in general, just stacking mana regen, hero fund, all sorts of ways that you can just keep stacking mana, and use it as part of your life pool.
I need to do an agnostic build soon.
They're very fun.
I don't really
can
play a lot of
recommend them.
Archmage in general.
You don't even have to be Archmage.
I know, I just haven't done many mana builds. Like,
So
yeah.
I did this is actually one of my more fun builds I've done recently. I did a Supreme Ego Hatred full cold conversion BV stagger. And because I had Supreme Ego and I had like 2000 mana left over, well, basically using the ring slot gave me like 2000 life. Like I used what's the thing called? The Essence Worm.
Right.
And all of it, I just had another 2000 mana. Because why not? So
Okay.
it was basically, the ring became 2000 life, which made it worth it to use it.
Mhm.
And I used Agnostic with that. It was very, very nice.
That's really good.
Yeah. And because I was Pathfinder, I had really strong mana potions. And I had an insane Fizz Explosion chest cascade thing because of the hatred stuff. Yeah. That's very
Let's
cool.
see.
Very cool build.
We are